Councilmember Stearns? Mayor Pro Tem Sackla?
Here.
Mayor Klur?
Here. Okay, we are here to interview and possibly appoint for Beautification Committee and DEAC, which is Downtown Enhancement Advisory Committee. And we will start with Beautification Committee with Brenna. Montaigne? Montaigne, thank you very much. Come on up. So this is your time to kind of share why you're wanting to be on the Beautification Committee, and we might have some questions. So, okay, floor is yours.
So I've been on the committee for 4 years now and really enjoying my time volunteering and helping to garden and make decisions that help the city. So, yeah.
Any questions?
No.
Go ahead, Tim.
And what do you think about public art and sculptures?
The right stuff in the right area can work really well. Yeah. That's.
Is that something that you'd like to see the committee maybe focus on as well as what you're already doing?
Potentially. I know that we've had some sculptures at Parker Plaza, and then those had to be moved on, and there was a lot of coordination that had to happen with that. So, again, the right art in the right area can make a big impact.
I just think of, I think it's Gresham, Oregon, that just has beautiful sculptures all over town. Public art. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Any other questions?
I just know she's a huge San Jose Sharks fan, so as long as that color scheme doesn't dictate any decisions, we'll be okay.
No shark sculptures. All right. Do we have a motion?
All right. I'll move to appoint Brenna Montaigne to the Beautification Committee.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Thank you.
Thank you.
And moving on to DEAC, I know Erica couldn't make it, but Danielle, would you come on up?
Hello.
Hello. I know you were on DEAC before, so maybe just a little bit about why you're wanting to come back and that kind of thing.
I have really enjoyed the opportunity to work with the DEAC committee because it's a place where you have the potential to bring change in a subtle but important way into the downtown area. And I really appreciate the enthusiasm of those who are on the DEAC committee right now, and we have some really awesome projects that we're hoping to see through, and I'd really like to be a part of that.
Awesome. Any questions? Tim?
I knew it.
So you've been on the DEAC committee, Danny, for like 2 years?
2 years.
Okay. So do you have a feel for the projects and what you think they're going to cost?
Cost,
Yeah.
definitely not solidified yet.
Okay.
Some of our projects will have a potential extraordinary cost, but we are looking into ways to help in the ways that DEAC can have events that might be a fundraising, so to speak, for those projects.
Okay, thanks. Thank you.
What are you all going to do in terms of the facade improvements and that funding program?
That's the one that we are just kind of getting the concrete information on as to how to proceed with it. Our committee started out with a whole bunch of brand new people with no idea what we could and couldn't do and how to do it. So we've been on a journey of acquiring that knowledge so that we actually can go forward. And at this point, the facade project is in the phase of drafting letters to the business owners and building owners of the downtown district. Then we will distribute those, hopefully as much as possible in person. And we are looking into what type of contract is required in order for the businesses to get like a rebate from the funds that were directed towards this project. And we're hoping that by April, those letters will be out and the businesses can respond if they're interested, and we can actually get those projects underway and hopefully done by the end of the summer.
Excellent. Next question. Since DIAC has the downtown business district, are you all going to give input into the proposed one-way streets and how that might look, and Parker Plaza or the opening of the creek?
Yeah, we are, I think, also just in the place of learning about that potential vision. And I really appreciate the work that Sora and Alta have done in terms of getting community feedback and looking into all of the details of that. I can say personally, I have my hopes that we would daylight the creek and actually make that a very beautiful area, but one-way streets would most likely be a part of that, but I realize how much logistics and how challenging that could be, and I'm really open to seeing what the right solution is, even that if it's different than maybe the one-way street idea, but something that would, really bring a bit of a green space into the downtown. I would really be behind.
Okay, so you guys aren't going to be just silent spectators?
No. Unfortunately, you're probably going to learn that we are not a very silent committee.
Perfect. Thank you.
Any other questions?
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay, with Erica's absence, will someone make a motion and also include her, since we have 2 vacancies in this, if you please?
Should I include her? Okay. So I'm moved to appoint Erica Bruiser and Danielle Williams to the Downtown Enhancement Advisory Committee.
Second. Yeah.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Thank you very much.
Oh, yeah, that's right.
You have a straight Roll call, please.
Councilmember Redmond.
Here.
Councilmember Collins.
Here.
Councilmember Stearns.
Move Voici.
Mayor Pro Tem Sackcliffe.
Here.
Mayor Kluwer.
Here, with no special presentations, we will move to public comment. Anything not on the agenda, please come on up. Go ahead and state your name and begin when ready.
David Ream, Mount Shasta, California. My speech of 1 month ago was ineffective, for I was abused within hours. Stop the elder abuse. Stop, meaning cease, put an end to an operation or activity. The, used as a function word to indicate that a following noun is definite. Elder, a person aged 60 or older. Abuse, defined by the government of the United States of America, quote, the knowing and infliction of physical or psychological harm, end quote. Context, the last 8 years. In 2017, the Elder Abuse Prevention and Prosecution Act became law. Roughly 1/3 of the time, the abuse comes from John Redmond, standing on the sidewalk in front of his business. The remaining time, the abuse comes from the maroon Jeep Grand Cherokee, plate starting with 3WGA. The abuse has 3 modes: the display of a middle finger, the use of expletives, profanity, and false accusations, and vehicle abuse. On March 1st, the abuse was further ratcheted up. At 4:42 p.m., after noticing for a half hour a raised white Ram truck, oversized tires, California plate, all numbers, and only 1 letter E, parked half on my sidewalk and half on the street. I called Mount Shasta Police Department to ask if there is a new snow parking ordinance. The kind lady says no, but she will tomorrow inform me, the code enforcement officer, of the parking arrangement. I press her a bit further, to then be told that she will also inform the officer on duty. Athena, my dog, and I proceed south on Chestnut to find the familiar maroon Grand Cherokee parked in a similar manner in front of Handsome John's Speakeasy. I call Mount Shasta PD again to report yet another vehicle parked in aforementioned manner. To my left is a young male, stranger to me, with a camera in hand. Suddenly, 3 men, including Mr. Redmond, approach us from the bar. They salute us with the 1-finger salute, and then proceed with the familiar expletives, profanities, and false accusations. Athena, the young stranger, and I retreat to the icy middle of the street where we are bombarded with snowballs. The Elder Abuse Act begins with the problem of abuse being underreported and under-prosecuted. The Act spends many words on how to collect relative data. The statistical analysis concludes after comparing a control of elders without
Mr.
abuse
Ream.
to an elder group with abuse. The conclusion is that elder abuse
Mr. Ream.
shortens life by a factor of 3.
Thank you. Anyone else want to come up? Thank you. Yes?
All righty, hello, I'm Jen Rogar, I live here. I've lived here about 3 years, I came here from Sacramento. And love it here, like everybody else, the mountain called me. I'm a retired teacher and I'm studying for the bar. I have the law degree, but I've got a passport. Anyway, enough about me. I care about the issue, I think Tim Stearns saw it on next door, the issue of the nest. And when I first moved here, I almost bought a house across the street, but I saw the nest, and as a homeowner, I went, I don't know. So I didn't buy the house. So my first point is that building that is affecting the homeowners, and I care for the homeowners, you know, I'm a homeowner. I have 3 homes, actually. I see a lot of dilapidated buildings in Dunsmuir here. There's homeless people. There's people on the mountain starting fires. And the young lady, April May, she's here. She started the post, and I thought it was beautiful. And there's a group of us that want to help you. And by the way, I want to thank you for your service, what you do. I've been to a lot of city council meetings in Sacramento, and it was very antagonistic. And that's not why I'm here. I'm not here to be antagonistic. I'm here to work with you and try to work together so that we can get people housed. Eden Sanctuary would be a great name for that little nest, which I understand turned into a drug den, but that's fixable instead of condemning it and letting it sit there. And I'm not saying you did it. I'm very new here and I don't know, you know, the history very well. I just know that there's housing that we need to house people. And single moms, or there's a woman here in Mount Shasta I've befriended that is homeless. Like I said, there's people on the mountain starting fires. They're homeless. It's a real problem. We have people with low-income housing. As you know, we have a shortage of affordable housing. So I'm just proposing that, you know, we get something done with the nest, clean it up. By the way, with it being boarded up is not a guarantee that there aren't people in there right now doing drugs inside. They have a way. They know how to board it up and look hidden, and there's a neighborhood there. There's people there with houses. So anyway, I want to wrap it up and just say I'm here to work with you. Like, I got a little money I can invest or whatever it takes, you know, and we'll start there, and then we'll move forward with other properties. So that's all I got to say. Thanks so much.
Thank you.
Comment.
And there might be, in our city manager's report, maybe give a brief update on the nest. We have been working with that property specifically, so.
I did see that last week.
Okay.
So that's great.
So, Joan, I was just going to ask that you stay here at least to hear the city manager's report.
Oh, I'll stick around, and I think April will stick around, and we got a team of 4 or 5 other people.
Great, thank you very much. Anyone else wish to speak for public comment? Anyone online?
Yes, our first speaker will be Raven Stevens.
Raven, begin when ready, please.
There we go. I just wanted to take a minute and thank the Public Works. They did a great job over these massive storms we had, and no complaints here. And the fact that they then was it just yesterday, I think, cleared the middle of the berms and everything downtown. It looks great and ready for the big rain, so just thank you.
Awesome, thank you very much. I agree. No one else? All right, we will close public comment and go to council and staff comments. Todd, would you like to start it off?
Sure. So let's start with the properties, the Nest and the old hospital. They have been, as you all know, working their way through the receivership process. The receivership process works like that. There's an attorney the city hires and works through the abatement process, gives the owner lots of opportunities to clean up that site or sell it, do something with it, until we get to a point where all remedies are exhausted and they're brought before a judge. And that judge, depending upon what kind of argument the other party makes, will then, if nothing has been done with the property, the judge will appoint that property to be part of receivership, and which at that point turned over to a real estate agent to assess what needs to be done to clean the site up and put it up for sale. I'm happy to report the Nest is now in receivership. It is I talked to the receiver today. They're coming up either this week or next to take photos and make an assessment of the property. And it can go one of two ways. An owner can buy it, potential property owner can buy it as is and clean it up, or the receiver could clean up that property, sell it, and recoup the costs for the cleanup. So that's where the nest is. It's no longer in the original owner's hands, it's in ours, and will be up on the market soon. The old hospital is pretty far along. The attorney for the party that owns that property has thrown up various smoke screens, including the last time saying that they've made substantial improvements to the property and that therefore, they should be given time to do something with it. And now all of a sudden, after all these years, there are plans for, a convalescent hospital. And so the judge gave this party a little bit more time, whereas the city then needs to show that the property hasn't been substantially cleaned up. There hasn't been any forward movement, and that's the case. We ended up going to the property, taking photographs inside because it hadn't been documented in a while, and it's a complete mess. Black mold, evidence of people living there. So when we go back to court the next time, I fully expect that that property will be in receivership too sometime this month or potentially in early April. So those two sites are going to be cleaned up very soon. So moving on to the next item is about the Enhanced Infrastructure Finance District. I spoke to Angela Davis, our county administrator. She's still doing her due diligence on what the risks are, what the benefits are, and she said that she will bring the issue to the Board of Supervisors, not tomorrow, but it would be the second meeting this month, and see where they stand on it. In the meantime, I've had some conversations with the gentleman that presented to this body a while ago that is still quite interested in the property. And if the county doesn't want to participate and we decide to go it alone as, with an EIFD, typically that would take us longer to harvest enough tax increment that would then allow us to put infrastructure on the site. But you're also allowed to have a developer come in, put the infrastructure in on their own dime, and be paid back over time for the cost of putting that infrastructure in. And, while the owner would prefer that we have an EIFD with the county and get that infrastructure built up front, he's willing to entertain the idea of putting in the infrastructure and being paid back. So that's in process. We also have DANCO, the affordable housing, 25-unit affordable housing project that has gone before the Planning Commission. Like any development project, we've had a number of people come out against it, always couched in, we think affordable housing is great that we're taking it on, but here are the reasons, a list of reasons why it isn't good at this site. So we've wrapped up the CEQA public comment period. We need to post those comments, and then we hold the next Planning Commission hearing where we finish up architectural design review. We had a first round of that along with the CEQA, gathering CEQA comments about a week ago. And we'll see where it goes from there, see if the Planning Commission approves it. The indication from the Planning Commission is they think this is a well thought out, well-designed project. They've had a couple comments on what they'd like to see changed. And, my guess is this is going to be approved. And what happens on the other end in terms of people looking for technicalities to fight this project, that potential is there, and we'll just face that as it comes. So been busy over the last couple of weeks. They're got 2 grants submitted. One for a state grant, that's for Lake Street, where we would narrow the travel lanes to slow traffic. There were 47 speeding tickets on that roadway last year, and a number of crashes. It would narrow those lanes. It would add protected bike lanes. It would include new ADA ramps. It would involve sidewalk gap infill, pedestrian level lighting, and pedestrian improvements overall, and we'll get a better project out of here that's consistent with the city's active transportation plan. So that grant went in last Wednesday, and we also submitted last week a federal grant for planning the reconstruction of the entire length of Mount Shasta Boulevard from I-5 all the way through the city for a little over $6 million. And that's through PS&E, plan, specification, and engineering that will then put us in a better position for construction funds the next go-round. And that has, to make it more competitive, we, and because it's the right thing to do, added bike lanes, included more electric vehicle charging, truck electrification, for charging, and other things the feds wanted to see to make this grant competitive. And we think we've got a pretty good grant, and that went in. And that's it for now.
Thank you. Council?
Yeah, through the chair. Question for city manager. So that grant, that last grant you mentioned, is it the $6 million possible award? Is that just for planning, or did that include construction?
That's for plan specification and engineering. It's getting it to the point where getting us up to the level of producing construction drawings.
Okay, thank you.
To the chair. City manager, another quick question. I'm not sure if I'm languaging this correctly, but I think it's called a dig once ordinance.
Oh, so one more time.
A dig once ordinance, where whenever we open up a trench on a road, we have an ordinance in place that puts conduit in the trench so that anybody who comes behind can run anything from underground utilities, fiber. Dig once, is that what they're called? And do we have such an ordinance in town?
We don't have that ordinance, but I'm glad you brought that up. As part of the Mount Shasta Boulevard project, we called for the undergrounding of utilities along the entire stretch.
Yeah, because when I was speaking to Calor, long story, details don't matter, but they said the one thing that you can do to make high-speed internet more friendly in your town is a dig once ordinance, where no matter where it is, if you dig, you put down conduit so we can come in later and run fiber and cable, whatever it is.
I'll take a look. Just a matter of coincidence, Ed Valenzuela, Supervisor Valenzuela, came by today. We spoke for a while. One of the issues on our discussion list was undergrounding of utilities, and that there are funds available. And so we're working together on that. And we're going to partner on fuels mitigation. We think that we've got a shot at a new tranche of funds, and he's going to work behind the scenes for us on the EIFD.
Thank you.
Any other staff with comments before we take it back to council?
Questions?
Sure. Sorry.
Thanks. Well, actually, question and information. In terms of information, the next hearing involving the old hospital is April 20th. And I would expect the judge to make a decision either at that hearing or shortly afterwards.
That's a great point. You know, Tim, Councilman Stearns is up at many of, you know, he's up there for court all the time, so he actually sees all these hearings, and he's, you know, been one of the folks with the firsthand, you know, view of the, you know, the ceremonies, and so has a lot to offer on this conversation.
In terms of Danco, I heard that Plan Commission seems to like the project. You expect them probably to approve the project. What sort of time frame are we looking at, and is this on next meeting's agenda?
It will be on the next Planning Commission agenda. We're hoping that, you know, we get full approval, but what I'm going to ask of the Planning Commission, if they deem that it's fit, if they have any more changes, they offer a conditional approval, because we need to get under the deadline with the Planning Commission if we want to be eligible for additional PLHA funds for the next round.
Well, and also in terms of construction timing.
Yes. Yep.
If we expect the construction to go forward this year.
Yep.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay, any council comments? I just wanted to piggyback on what Raven said. I had someone reach out to me from Colorado saying that they used to live here, now live in Colorado, and when it snows there, they're kind of down for about 5 days straight, and we certainly don't have that problem here, so hats off to the Public Works crew. Especially how often we got hammered these last 2 weeks. Very commendable. Thank you very much. And we will move to committee updates. Anything to add there, Todd?
I don't. This last DIAC meeting, I had a conflict and couldn't make it. I, you know, was kind of kept abreast of the goings-on and what we need to accomplish, and I'm pushing the pieces that I need to push along, including getting the Powerbox Art contract out of Pac Power, and we have final okay on the engineering drawings for the Flower of Life and its placement. And then, you know, there was a discussion of facade improvements. And so we've got a good crew with DIAC, an excellent crew that are actually rowing in the same direction and really motivated. So
Awesome.
I'm looking for a lot from that group.
Great. And it sounds like they only have one more vacant seat. Is that right?
Correct.
Okay,
Yeah.
great. All right, number 7, consent agenda. The city manager recommends approval of the following consent agenda items. All resolutions and ordinances on this agenda or added hereto shall be introduced or adopted as applicable by title only, and the full reading thereof is hereby waived. A, approval of minutes, February 13, 2023, regular city council meeting. B, approval of disbursements, accounts payable, 2/15/23, total gross payroll and taxes for period ending 2/5/23. C, military equipment annual report. D, monthly investment report. E, approval of memorandum and understanding, fire department bargaining unit. F, resolution to continue authorizing temporary on-call dispatch position. G, approval of new police officer, police services manager, and dispatch supervisor job descriptions. H, Police Department Monthly Report, February 23. I, City Manager's Report, March 1, 23.
Move to approve consent agenda items A through I by title only.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
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 All right, number 8, public hearing. Resolution setting short-term rental fees. Kathy, would you?
Sure.
Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, members of the council. Last month, the City Council adopted ordinance CCO-23-01 outlining short-term rental permit requirements. As part of this ordinance, council is required to establish fees associated to the permitting process following a public hearing. California Government Code prohibits local agencies from charging fees for services that exceed the estimated reasonable cost of providing the service for which the fee is charged. The Finance Department has determined the hourly rate and time spent by each staff member, and this breakdown can be found as Exhibit A to the proposed resolution. Staff recommends holding the public hearing as required and adopting the resolution establishing fees for short-term rental property inspections and permits. Happy to answer any questions.
Thank you. Any questions for Kathy before we open public hearing? Okay, public hearing is open. Anyone wish to speak? Anyone online wish to speak? Oh. Are we starting in 3 minutes? Mr. Ream, if this is not to do with the subject matter, then I will ask that you take a seat, please.
Pledge allegiance, and in the Pledge of Allegiance, it says, under God.
I'm sorry, this is not what the public hearing is in reference to. Please have a seat.
Turn his mic off.
Mr. Ream, you're making me in particular feel uncomfortable. Would you mind please taking a seat? This is not pertaining to the public hearing.
We're talking about
A
short-term rental
month ago,
fees.
I came to speak to you. I thought I had 180 seconds. You gave me 6 before you interrupted me, and you interrupted me, and you interrupted me, and then you interrupted me. Only John Stackford did not interrupt me.
Crazy.
John?
All right, Councilman Redmond, I think that you're out of order in making comments like that. I'd like to talk to you after the meeting is over.
Oh, I can't wait, Tim.
Thank you. Anyone else wish to speak on public hearing? Okay, we will close the public hearing and bring it back to council. I believe that's all we need to do for this portion. Is that correct? Okay.
Resolution number.
This would be CCR-23-05.
Move adoption of resolution CCR 23-05, a resolution of the City Council of the City of Mount Shasta establishing fees for short-term rental properties, inspection, and permits.
By title only?
I think we only have to do that for ordinances.
Oh, okay. Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
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 All right, number 9, approval of CCR-23-06, I'm assuming, rescinding resolution CCR-18-17 regarding the wastewater discharge permit for Crystal Geyser. Todd, would you mind speaking to this? Or Mr. Kenny?
Yes, as you recall, some time ago, the Crystal Geyser matter went to bed, but the legislation didn't. The litigation didn't, and there was a writ brought, and part of the writ, which was granted when the appellate court said that the EIR was not sufficient, directed the city council to rescind the resolution it passed finding the EIR adequate for the issuance of the waste discharge permit. So this resolution, and so to return the writ, we have to tell the court we revoke that resolution, and that's what this does. It has, I guess, no operative effect, of course, because the discharge permit, while it was approved, it was never issued because Crystal Geyser had to do a number of things before it could be issued, and those things never happened. So this undoes what we approved, and we will report that to the court, and it should be the end of the matter.
Thank you very much. Any questions? Okay, we'll open it up for public comment. Yes, come on up.
I just can't hear very well.
Okay.
So you guys give a little bit on my...
Sure, yes, thank you. Anyone online wish to speak? Okay. Back to council.
Move adoption of Resolution CCR 23-06, Resolution of the City Council of the City of Mount Shasta, rescinding Resolution CCR 18-17.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
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 Okay, agenda item number 10, discussion possible action, report on Mount Shasta Boulevard, Chestnut One-Way Couplet, and the daylighting of Castle Creek. We have a report from Pace. Oh, and there's Pace. We can't hear you, though. 1 second. Okay, maybe now we should be able to.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Yes, thanks, Seth.
Excellent. Okay, let me get a share screen going here. Are you guys seeing what I'm seeing, the plan?
We are, yes.
Okay, good evening everyone. For anybody who doesn't know me, my name is Seth Petrie with Pace Engineering, city engineer for the city. Todd asked us to take a look kind of at schematically at feasibility of converting Chestnut and Mount Shasta Boulevard into kind of a one-way couplet based on a study performed by Alta a few years ago. So we kind of took a pass through this and, tried to do some schematic layout of the parking stalls as noted in the report to kind of come up with an idea of how many parking stalls we'd get, as well as the addition of we'll say the removal of the parking lot on East Castle Street between Chestnut and Mount Shasta Boulevard. So the goal of our kind of feasibility analysis was to take a look at kind of the pros and cons of going down this route, as well as coming up with kind of a planning level cost estimate for what this might cost. So as we went through this, based on some topographic map information we had from North Mount Shasta Boulevard on previous projects and some aerial information from Chestnut, we pretty quickly realized that the amount of parking would actually be reduced. A lot of the parking that already exists along both of those streets don't meet standard depths. So putting in standard depth stalls, as well as trying to incorporate bike lanes to try and keep with the city's goal of the active transportation plan, netted a large reduction in the amount of parking spots, especially when taking into account the removal of the parking on East Castle Street. And so let me bring up I went through and kind of did a tech memo here to kind of go through the pros and cons of what we saw as we went through our analysis. The potential benefits are the new bike routes along both streets. I know the active transportation plan is really, the city's really wanting to add bike routes everywhere, and so we wanted to make sure we incorporated that into our schematic design. I believe another goal of this was to promote more traffic along the businesses along Chestnut Street, which is supported by the active transportation plan prepared by Alma, showing that by directing all northbound traffic along Chestnut, you kind of just get more drive-by traffic for those businesses. The daylighting of Castle Creek there provides a new community park and landscape area kind of right in the downtown corridor. which is a definite benefit for the community. And just overall aligns with the city's goal of promoting alternative forms of transportation. So those were the benefits that kind of really jumped out to us as we looked at this. Moving on to, we'll say, our potential drawbacks and issues that this may create. The first I kind of talked about was the overall reduction in parking stalls due to the space restraints. The transportation plan mentioned putting 45-degree parking stalls, which is the most efficient way to get stalls along the streets with the most number of them. But the width requirements from face of curb to face of curb, it didn't work much. It didn't work on Chestnut at all, and it only partially works along North Mount Shasta Boulevard. So we would still have a lot of parallel parking stalls similar to what is there already. The parked vehicles along the one-lane, one-way streets would be required to burst into traffic, which I believe may have been unaccounted for in the original traffic delay and level of service calculations in the Alta report. I didn't see any mention of it, but with one-way traffic and everybody backing out into that lane, that's going to back traffic up quite a bit, especially on heavy parking days. I'm sure anybody that's been in a parking lot that only has, a very narrow access aisle between parking stalls can kind of understand what I'm talking about there when everybody's trying to get out. It's going to really back traffic up along those one-way roads. The study identified that it would require a signalization at Lake and Chestnut. I believe it potentially may also require signalization at Chestnut and Alma, based on some future development that we've seen potentially come across in this area up here by East Ivy and Chestnut. I believe when the report was originally created, it was doing traffic counts that were at the current levels and may not have accounted for ultimate build out of the area and future traffic loads. And I think when that's taken into account, the level of service at those intersections might be lower than anticipated and would require signalization to coordinate to keep traffic at level of service C or higher, which is the city's standard. I think there's a concern for providing adequate turnaround at McLeod Avenue, down kind of the south end here to get, anybody that wants to kind of from southbound back to northbound and people coming off of McLeod Avenue. I think this may also require potential signalization. I know that McLeod Avenue and then coming north along Mount Shasta is a major route for people coming from that side of town, and forcing all the one-way traffic, anybody that needs to turn around to potentially make that left corner there is potentially going to require some form of signalization, intersection. Right-of-way is very narrow through there, and so that could require potentially acquiring some right-of-way in that area, which can be costly and time-consuming to do. I think it also poses, and this was noted in the Alta report, response time for emergency vehicles through the area. When you only have one way to go through and you're eliminating the East Castle Street bypass through there, emergency response time through downtown likely will be increased. That's also, as I mentioned before, kind of a main corridor coming off McLeod Avenue for any type of evacuations through the town. So, any reduction from 2 lanes to 1 lane just reduces the amount of available space you have to even run two-way double lane evacuation routes out of the city to get to I-5. One thing that happens when you go to one-way couplets is the smattering of signage you'll need. The downtown area will be lots of new signs, one-way, do not enters. Will have to be put up kind of all over those streets until traffic gets used to the new traffic patterns, and that's going to be more signs for the city to maintain in the long run. The daylighting of Castle Creek. Anytime you daylight anything into a creek or stream, you create potential new flooding concerns. It is coming out of a storm drain system and daylighting and going back into a storm drain system. But those are just potential concerns through that area. It would be, nice to have a creek through your park, but, anything that's an established waterway may eventually end up being a regulated floodplain. And the last one is, as far as construction and cost, all of this work would have to be done in one, kind of one swoop. There's no way to real phase this project. Once you start going one way on one, you kind of got to, do it all at once. So any grant funding that would need to be acquired for the project would have to be, big lump sum, all done at one time. And I think that's going to put, quite a strain on the downtown area as far as traffic control goes during that construction period. I've also prepared a couple of cost estimates for the project, and we kind of came at this in two ways. The first one was 30-degree parking, which can fit within the city street now with very minimal curb gutter and sidewalk improvements. And that's the one that has the large reduction in parking count. And we estimate, and again, this is kind of schematic level estimate, at about just under $3 million for that project. And if we wanted to, and I would think that would be a goal of the city, to at least maintain the amount of parking spots that you have now, you'd need to go to 45-degree parking, which would require taking 3 to 4 feet out of the existing wide sidewalks. And that would take the number up to about $3.64 million. So that's kind of the results. I think the next steps, if the council wants to continue to pursue the one-way couplet downtown, is we likely would need another updated traffic study to include ultimate build-out, any future developments that are going on in the area, to analyze those other intersections that potentially might need to be signalized. And then once that's completed, to figure out, does this meet the level of service needs of the city, proceed this engineering.
Hey, Seth, this is Todd.
Yes.
Question for you. If you were to, instead of angled parking on Mount Shasta on both sides, if you did angled parking on one side of the street and did parallel on the other, would we preserve enough parking, in your
Probably not.
Okay. And I want to make sure that I've got this correct, that with angled in parking and a reduction to one lane, if we had, a catastrophic event, wildfire, say, who knows, a lava flow, you would not be able to move those parked angled vehicles out of the way, and you'd be left with one travel lane to get out of town southbound. Is that correct?
That is correct. I think you'd have to assume in an emergency situation that let's say worst case scenario is there would be parked cars there. I mean, even if you had a couple of parked cars, you're essentially eliminating the ability to use that as a lane to get out.
Thanks.
And one more thing I'd like to mention is back to kind of the parking is, if the city decides to continue to go down this route, an analysis will need to be done of all the businesses downtown to find out what their minimum required amount of stalls is to service their business, and make sure that any potential design meets that need. I kind of have a feeling that by getting rid of all of the parking on East Castle Street, that like Ace Hardware down there, that there's just not going to be enough parking stalls to meet code requirements for all of those businesses. And all those businesses, I think, would definitely need to be on board with this type of change to traffic, change to the parking that's available in front of their buildings, or within walking distance at least.
Okay, thank you so much. We'll bring it to council for questions, and I just wanted to start it off by saying, first of all, thank you for this very thorough report. I try to be as solution-based as possible, so while you're bringing a lot of reasons why it can't work, I would love to hear maybe some alternate things that you see that could make it work. Obviously, we want to get the business buy-in. This is as much for the downtown as it is for tourism and that sort of thing. So number one question, I guess, is one of the downsides that has been coming up every now and then is that the weight of Chestnut Street wouldn't be able to hold the amount of through traffic from semis needing to go through to distribute. Did any of your research either approve of that or disprove that theory?
No, we didn't go that far down into, that would require, some research on the structural section of Chestnut Street and what its traffic index was. But that is a true statement that, if heavier vehicles are making more annual daily traffic along that it would need to meet the same structural section requirements of North Mount Shasta Boulevard.
Sure. Yeah, and I think, because Pepsi plant is located on Chestnut, so I would, in my limited knowledge, would think that that would be okay, but that is something we'll need to know. Can you give me your top 2 positive takeaways from your research about how it could work?
And just to kind of, point to about solutions versus problems, as I went through this analysis, I was actually surprised at how many drawbacks I did come across when we started doing this based on the Alta report. I said the beautification downtown of the daylighting of Castle Street, I think that's a definite positive. It's right, we didn't really go through too many like design iterations or on that because we wanted to make sure that this was definitely the direction the city wanted to go before looking at that. But I think that's always a huge benefit for a downtown community like this. Signalizing downtown has the benefit of kind of future-proofing traffic along the north and southbound lanes, depending on how much ultimate buildup actually does happen in the city. So that's never a bad thing. It's a little costly, but it gets you better traffic control. So I said the top 2 things are you would definitely have a beautification of the downtown and providing safe regulation with bike lanes along both corridors.
Wonderful. Thank you so much.
Yeah.
Council? Any questions?
Seth, thanks for your preliminary report and your thoughts. I just spent 4 days in training with doctors and lawyers. At that time, one of the doctors was asked about his opinions as an expert, and he said, well, if you get 3 experts in the room and ask them about any particular item, you're going to get 5 opinions. So
very true.
One of the questions I have in my mind is have you brought in any other experts, whether they be traffic specialists or economic development specialists or engineering specialists for your preliminary thoughts?
No, the traffic specialist is something that I think would be the next step. I did confer with Jim Elkins, the previous city engineer, on this, who was longtime city engineer for the city of Mount Shasta, to kind of get his thoughts, and those are incorporated into my report. So yeah, long answer. We kind of just did an internal review of this.
Okay.
But I definitely, we hold the same idiom in engineering. You ask 3 engineers the same problem and you get 3 different answers.
All right. And there's a Chinese saying about problems are also opportunities, depending on how we look at this. But so at least we've got your preliminary thoughts. And if I understand correctly, we're not asked to take any action tonight. This was just for informational purposes?
That's my understanding.
Okay.
So if I'm able to add something really quickly, Tom Hesseldins was interested. He was to be here tonight to talk about his thoughts on this plan, since he's spent a lot of time working on it. And he knows the area and is pretty thoughtful about this. And I'd like to hear maybe at the next meeting have him come in and give his 2 cents. But Michael Williams weighed in on this, and I thought he had a couple really good comments. But one of them was, getting back to our internal discussions about seeking grant funds for this. For transportation, you have to have a problem that you're solving for to be able to chase grant dollars. And some of the thinking behind this is that if it's active transportation related, and consistent with the active transportation plan, that's our golden ticket because there's a lot of money out there for those kind of projects. But, and Michael's comment, and it's one of the things I thought of, is having bicycle parking up near the curb as a way to protect bicyclists. To do that, you would need specialized equipment to make sure that it's free of debris or it won't be used. And that's something else to consider. But, I think we've just got to listen to a host of people and see if we can come up with some kind of compromise solution if we want to go down this path. But I can invite Tom to the next meeting. We can continue this.
Okay. And Seth, if I can follow up with Todd's comments, my understanding is there is a lot of money available right now for active transportation. Is that your understanding too?
Yes.
Okay.
And
thanks.
Especially at the federal level where the kind of dollars that we need for a project like this is really our best opportunity to chase.
Okay.
Chair. So I don't really have questions. Maybe I'll formulate one as we go along. But to me, the big question is, what are we trying to accomplish? There's one goal seems to be improving the business conditions on Chestnut. And would a one-way couplet help that happen? And the city manager has mentioned a few times, probably not, because the real issue is the fact that there's too much residential structures on that street, and it hasn't transitioned to a real commercial zone. I'm not really sure that changing the traffic flow would make that a difference. What we really need is someone interested in transforming that street, large dollars coming in, buying properties, and doing something substantial. That's only happened on one building since I've been here in 2005. I don't remember the number. It's between Castle and Alma. One building was built, and there's been very little change on Chestnut otherwise. Sorry, correct me if I'm wrong. The next big change will be the Danco project if it happens, which is residential. So the one goal is to improve business conditions. I guess the other goal is to improve traffic flow. That seems to be contradicted by everything this consultant has said. In fact, there's some potentially dangerous conditions created by going to one-way. To a couplet, but I think it would be not so dangerous if we kept parallel parking, if we went to parallel parking throughout the whole area, but that isn't the third goal people want in this, is a lot more parking spaces. I think this is, and I've always thought this is an utterly complex situation that is going to involve heavy participation by the businesses in the area. Potentially, there could be something interesting if we did a land swap with a couple of the businesses. I'll just mention it. It's the Beers and Ace, and turn those into parking lots or parking lots with structures above them, etc. Very expensive, very complicated. I'm really not sure what to do. I do like the idea of beautifying Castle Street. I think it's a very beautifiable street. I'm not sure if we want to give up all that parking, so I think the block from from the boulevard to Alder might be where you make a park and go to parallel parking there. So in other words, I conclude with saying maybe we need to, as a council, rethink and maybe simplify our goals and try and come up with something that'll be more doable and less complex. I'm very pro, and I always have been, daylighting Castle, but I'm also not too interested in giving up all that parking for Ace and everybody over there. So it's, again, fairly complex, unless you make the parklet in the next block and just beautify the two little parklets we have on the Chestnut to Boulevard section of what would be Castle Creek. So I think if we open our minds and try and figure out simpler plans, it might behoove us to do that. I'm not sure about the couplet anymore. All these signals and narrow paths, I don't know. I do know there's some interest in going to angled parking and on Mount Shasta Boulevard to create more parking by the businesses there. So maybe leave the traffic flows alone, but look into just adding more parking via angle parking in the 2 blocks downtown, 2 or 3 blocks downtown. And then incorporate, and this is also complex, incorporate the active transportation ideas that may help us with the grants to improve these roads. I'm not saying we go, I guess I am saying go back to the drawing boards and see how we can simplify what we could possibly do and make some improvements that are achievable versus $3 million plus not really achievable, and potentially dangerous according to the experts. So, and then the bit about the corner where Bistro 107 is, so McLeod, Chestnut, Mount Shasta. I didn't really think of that as being such a complex problem, but apparently it is in the traffic world. Plus, we don't really have our parking stalls aren't correct right now, so we're going to have to change all that. So I feel like taking a step back and maybe redefining what it is we want to do.
To the chair. Seth?
Yeah.
Help me through some numbers here. There were 47 spaces in the Castle Street daylighting section that would be removed?
Yes, that's what we counted.
And what was the net gain or loss of parking spaces, including the loss of 47 spaces there, given the parking solutions that you have presented to us tonight?
So yeah, in the lower left-hand corner of my figure, we kind of went through the existing stalls, and then if we went to 30-degree parking, we have a net, a loss of 55 on Chestnut. We gained 49 on Shasta Boulevard, and we lost those 47. So we're, net minus 57 spots. If we go with the more expensive 45-degree parking stall option, we do gain spots. We're about even on Chestnut. We gain spots along Mount Shasta Boulevard. So we gain about 40 spots in the 45-degree parking stall, which is the one that was mentioned in the Alta's report, but I'm not sure they knew that the width on Chestnut didn't accommodate just switching straight to 45-degree. And so that would take your number up to the $3.6 million project.
Right.
Yep.
In this presentation with the 30-degree parking, if you'll scroll up to Alma and Mount Shasta Boulevard on the northwest corner, there's an empty lot that I believe is still for sale. It's about 450 feet long and could accommodate about 45 10-foot wide stalls. And I see you have some kind of nomenclature there. I'm trying to figure out if those are parking places that you put in there or not.
Yeah, so we anticipated running a bike lane through there and then parallel parking along there.
Do you know how many parking places you had in there?
Just in the 450 feet, I would say maybe 10 or 15.
Okay.
So I see what you're getting at, like a net gain of maybe 30 spots if you converted that into angled parking.
Well, again, no expert here, but I just saw that as an open area that could easily be added to take up some of the moving around of losing and gaining of parking spots elsewhere. And,
True.
And finally, this is kind of both for you, Seth, and the city manager. Whether the number is $3 or $3.6 million just for the grant funding to get all this together, and that there is a lot of money out there these days, it comes back to what we started to, I heard discussed, which is what problem are we trying to solve such that we could go get grant money. And I don't know that I'm clear that I heard clarity about, do we have a reasonable chance to get these grants pending some problem that we're trying to pending some problem that we're trying to solve, which I assume would be in the active transportation arena, i.e. bike lanes. And is there some kind of net takeaway of, yeah, we would have a good shot at getting this money, or not?
I would say that's probably a little tough to say. I mean, honestly, it's probably going to be, I would say, a long shot. I mean, you're adding bike lanes, and you already have some bike lanes along there, but if bike lanes is the only problem that the active transportation program, depending on which one it is trying to solve, the amount of, I will say, the percentage of the construction costs that is going to that, it probably does not make it a very attractive project. And again, we'll throw the caveat on that. It's highly dependent upon the programs, it's the funding programs themselves and what criteria they use for selection.
Right.
So, active transportation is really saleable when it comes to state or federal grants, but I think when we're talking about the type of money we'd be asking for here, there would have to be something that we're solving on the roadway as well, other than active transportation. Like, say, our PCI was low. We've got really, torn up streets, and that was part of this.
A PCI?
Pavement Condition Index. Sorry.
He's a transportation guy.
Nerdy acronyms. So it's got to be, I think it's, adding a bike lane feels like planting a green mustache around your house to put some, around the outside of your house without any kind of design. It just feels like it's stuck on there.
So St. Patty's Day is coming.
20 the chair. So if you apply for a grant for active transportation, the focus of the grant and the project that you're trying to fund is about improving transportation other than car driving. So if that's the goal and it's a great plan, so forth, but if majority of what you're doing is talking in that grant application is showing that you're trying to improve parking and create a one-way couplet, it's obviously about cars. So that wouldn't help your chances of getting that grant if you're trying to couple active transportation goals and improvements with automobile and parking improvements, I would think. In other words, we're trying to do the bike lanes and improve the sidewalks, But in addition, we're going to do all this stuff with parking and one-way traffic for cars and hope it all works based on the plans we have. Please fund us. I don't know, is that going to fly?
So, state grants tend to be focused on one issue, maybe two. With federal grants, there's a whole host of things that they're looking for. And if you're focusing on active transportation, there's the active transportation component, and you need to make the argument about you've got positive health outcomes and you're getting people out of their cars, et cetera. But it also there is a cost-benefit analysis and what you're likely to see as the results of an overall project. And if your overall goal is to improve active transportation and improve the quality of the roadway and slow traffic, which the angled-in parking would do, and roadway improvements, those all hit the sweet spot. And when you're doing a federal grant, you need to hit all those things. And I think you can make a pretty compelling argument with people on bikes. You'll have more people in shops, especially if you have facilities to park your bike. If it's, with the angled-in parking, it makes it a slower traffic environment, so peds are more easily to cross the street. I think you can make an argument for economic revitalization as part of this as well. So I think if it was a federal grant, it would tick a lot more boxes, as opposed to a state grant that's straightforward, hits one or two things, and then you're out, like Lake Street. They really wanted to know how you were calming traffic and how you're making it better for everybody else that isn't in a single occupancy vehicle.
It sounds like, and then we'll open for public comment because I think we're getting a little ahead of our skis, but it sounds like we have an opportunity to also showcase that it would add parking. Granted, it would cost more than anticipated, but we do have an option that adds parking in addition to business development, yada, yada. So I think we should have a committee and work on this as a workshop item, would be my guess.
I do think public input on this, because
sure,
this is, I am sure if we do not work this through the channels, there are going to be some pretty unhappy campers unless they've bought into the process.
Okay. Yeah, go ahead, John.
So since we've gone through this in the last 2 weeks, my concerns are with snow removal with this design, because especially with having the business on Chestnut, I think as John knows with his Alsco truck getting to me and stuff, it was tight, even with everybody parallel parking properly to give space that way. But just with an idea of snow removal, and this is just spitballing, because I looked it up to see if the design even happens, but as much as I think bike lanes are a waste of time because everybody just drives on the sidewalks anyways with their bikes, what if the idea is to just have the bike lane down the middle of the road in the design, so then that's what we lose with snow removal, since let's face it, if it's storming and a lot of snow, you're not going to get a lot of bike use right then. But just as far as putting the snow still in the middle of the road, then we only lose a bike lane and not the traffic lane potentially, if this is just a one. Just as a thought, this is not anything that way, but just as far as just snow removal, especially being with my business next to Pepsi, there's been times where I've helped them, like stopping traffic at the intersection of Lake and Chestnut so that their semis can back out and go the wrong way down traffic to get out because of the snow, because of the berms. So that's just one of my concerns in all this is just, do we need the bike lane? Can we put it in the middle? But my concerns are the snow removal because the last 2 weeks have been rough that way.
All right. I think we're probably going to have a lot more discussions on this and
It's
more ideas from,
it's a complicated one.
from various aspects.
Okay, let's open up for public comment and then we can come back. Yes, please.
Push. Oh, there we go. So I'm Jen Rogar again. I don't know a lot about this issue, but that property you mentioned, there's a property that, a parking lot. Maybe you could put a hostel there because you got a lot of young people that come through in the summer. Instead of camping on the mountains, starting illegal fires, they'd have a cheap hostel to stay at. I don't know if it's big enough. I think we have enough parking. I don't know about I don't see a lot of bikes traveling downtown Mount Shasta. I really don't. I mean, I see a lot of kind of wealthy people come through. There's enough parking. We need housing. So I don't know if that space is big enough, but maybe stick a hostel there is something that Mount Shasta does not have. Low-priced housing for the hippies and people who don't have a lot of money, that want to come visit. Anyway.
Thank you.
I happen to live on Chestnut and Castle Street. I would be the nearest person that lives to this water that goes under the street. There's not a lot of people that live on the 300 block of Chestnut. Currently, there's myself, my dog, and 3 women to my south. That's it. Now, Tom Heselden had a beautiful presentation to this council. He's been here for 30 years or more, like myself. I think we both deserve a little respect and dignity. Respect and dignity. That's what a society is based on. Without that, you're chaos. Without equal application of the law, you are in chaos. You can't have parking on the sidewalk on Chestnut Street and not on the boulevard. Imagine how Muriel would feel if she walks out and sees my big truck parked in front of City Hall. Now, Tom Heselden acquires, his plan adds parking spaces, but it necessitates buying the Ace parking lot, that's also on Castle Street, and also Beeger's car repair. So on purchasing those 2 properties, he has a plus, if I remember the number, 59 more parking spaces than currently is there. That's with the daylighting of Castle Creek and the one-way couplet. If you follow Tom's plan, and Tom has spent hours and hours and hours contributing to the beautification of this town and to the safety to pedestrians. There are pedestrians in this town too. And it's quite remarkable to walk around this town when it's icy streets.
Thank you. Anyone else?
Hi, my name is Brian Ellis, and I'm a local resident here in the city of Mount Shasta. Just wanted to point out that with these infrastructure projects like this, there are lots of examples all over the states. I come from Colorado. Cities like Vail, Colorado, Steamboat Springs, Crested Butte. 30 years ago, they were in the sort of the same boat that Mount Shasta is, so we may want to look to them for examples of where they were economically. Oh, you can't hear me, sorry. Where they were economically, population, how they wanted to grow. These sorts of projects definitely speak to the overall growth of the city over the next decades, right? So, but I do want to mention that as a cyclist, bike lanes are extremely important. And I'm sorry, sir, we don't ride on the sidewalk as serious cyclists. And Mount Shasta has really fantastic cycling all around. So if we want to grow, then that has to be part of the plan. Thanks.
Sorry, would you have one in particular city from Colorado that you can think of that would be a good?
Any of the ski towns,
Okay.
to be honest, Steamboat Springs has some really unique traffic plan designs. One thing that came to mind for me at the Chestnut Mount Shasta Boulevard intersection on the south side was some sort of creative roundabout solution. I don't know if Pace looked into that, but that sort of thing. Even on the other side on Chestnut.
Awesome. Thank you very much.
Durango's a good example, too.
I don't know Durango as well, but yeah. Yeah, I know Steamboat Springs uses a lot of, Steamboat and Vail use a lot of roundabouts to good results. Golden, Colorado has too, but there's a lot more traffic there.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah.
Thank you very much.
Thanks.
Anyone else?
Good evening. My name is Tracy J. Costello. I live at 107 North C Street, Mount Shasta. Last time I came to the meeting, I advised you that I was in an unequivocal opposition to any elimination of parking spaces anywhere in town or any of the one-lane, one-way streets proposed. I cannot believe the amount of money we're spending on studying various subjects to death, such as consolidation of police and fire. We studied that to the price of how much, I don't know. We're left with nothing. We're left empty-handed for an idea that hadn't come to, it was a ridiculous idea anyway. We've got it right now, and we're going to keep it right, I hope, with your trust. So the studies, I think that if you spent more time doing services for the citizens of this town, you could be remembered in a lot more fondly. Because of the amount of snow this time, I had my alley behind I'm required to get off the highway in front of my house, C Street, in the event of a snow event, required to get it out the alley and back. But they didn't take the snow in the alley down far enough for me to get into or out of the alley. I was back there when it happened, spent 2 hours to try to dig out, which for 2 men, try to dig out, and got 2 hours, got it out, and it was high-centered coming out of there, and it's been out ever since. And I can't get back in because they don't want to bring the what is it called, the Bobcat back and start getting snow out of there. They just want to concentrate on the commercial areas. They're not doing us justice in the residential areas. You've got a library tax that we've been paying for years now. You dump the idea of a great idea, a bunch of great plans for a new library, you dump that. I'm not very appreciative of that at all. I know that we had a good city council member that was trying to spearhead getting the new library in. If I'm not mistaken, it was John Stackflet. You can raise his hand if that's the case. The only member that I can add some praise to. We need to get off that back burner on the library. I'm sorry for getting off subject, Mayor. Sorry for getting off subject, but I'm really hot about the library issue, how we've allowed that to be neglected. We've been collecting money and money and money. What do you call it? The e-commerce has gotten a lot of money into the coffers of the library fund. That's
Okay.
a great thing.
Thank you very much. I would suggest that you stay up to date because we are working on the library actively. Anyone else in the audience wish to speak?
Okay, our first remote speaker will be Peggy Risch.
Hello, Peggy. Please begin when ready.
Okay. So thank you for the opportunity to speak on this agenda item. I am no expert, but I have lived here for over 2 decades, and so I use the streets a lot on foot, by car, and I actually bicycle. I definitely do not use a sidewalk for my bicycle. Currently, I go all different routes to get to my office on the south end of town because there aren't really any safe bicycle routes. I think bicycle routes that are designed for safe use is really important. The one thing there's 2 points that I'd like to make. One is that just to consider that Mount Shasta, much of it is considered a very high fire risk. And so my concern is, the timeline, if this were to even go forward, and we have our 2 main arterial streets that basically are going to be a construction zone, how will the residents move safely out of fire? And these are real potential possibilities just because we are surrounded by national forests. So I really have concerns about that. My other question is the report, the technical memo here, basically is about one-way for Chestnut and Mount Shasta Boulevard, but somehow the north end of Chestnut Street is basically devoid of any kind of analysis, any type of report about how that might be utilized with parking, with bicycle lanes. And so, I'm just curious how that got eliminated from the discussion, since it is Chestnut Street and it is part of the couplet idea. And thank you very much.
Thank you, Peggy.
Our next speaker is Vicki Gold.
Okay, Vicki, begin when ready, please.
Actually, Joanna was next. Could we do Joanna first? Johanna?
Go ahead, Vicki. We'll get to Johanna.
Go ahead, Vicki.
So I wanted to thank you all. I came in late, but I heard all of the city council people's comments, and I think they were all very, well posed and thought through. I also think it's a very complex process. I think your idea of having a committee would be excellent to study this because it is very important. And second thing is I wanted to thank the city and Public Works for the wonderful job of clearing the snow. It was the biggest challenge I've seen since I've moved here. And, 2010 was the last big storm, but they did a really amazing job. And I've had some anonymous people ask me to express that if I spoke with you. The next thing is, I really think you might revisit the idea of Parker Plaza parking lot right behind it as a 2-story facility with paid parking. I think if you abandoned the idea of parking meters, it would not force more people onto the neighborhood streets, as we know it does. I mean, I personally will go to a neighborhood street rather than pay for parking in other towns. So I think that would help relieve that pressure point that people were talking about and not liking. And I didn't hear 100% support from any of you on the parking meters. The parking lot could be 2 stories. You could give passes for people who are handicapped, disabled in any way. If you wanted to, free passes for locals. But I think if you had a parking facility at South Mount Shasta Boulevard on Roseburg property and another one perhaps at Spring Hill, we could get a grant for that, allowing for bicycle parking, have safe, secure bicycle lanes. Bicycles are extremely important, but you have to have a place to park them safely, and it would be for both electric and regular bikes. If you had those 3 parking structures, I think you could get a grant for a trolley or a van to go back and forth for the city, with or without a small fee, that would make it very, community-oriented, so people would not need to park their cars. They could just come in their bicycle or their car in one of those places and then not hassle with the parking, and it wouldn't force the parking onto the neighborhood streets. So I'm very appreciative of the study. I think that the Chestnut pinch point is so crucial that you look at that now before dealing with the Mountain Townhomes project, because it's almost as if the mountain spoke to us this week saying that diagonal parking on Ivy and Chestnut is a very bad idea, and I'm going to show you why. You haven't seen why for the last 13 years, but this is what could happen. And I hope you'll take another look at that very carefully before, when the Planning Commission looks at it and you receive that project. I am sure there are federal and state grants for this, for repairing the streets, for those parking lots, for bicycles, and for much more safe transportation. Thank you.
Thank you, Vicki.
Our next speaker will be Johanna.
Okay, Johanna, begin when ready.
Good evening. This was a very interesting conversation, and I'm glad everyone's concerned about safety and snow removal and bike lanes and parking. And some of my thoughts on that are Pine Street is a main artery into town. And in terms of getting grants, I think we could wrap Pine into using that, because we need to clear the snow on the sidewalks on Pine Street. I think to let all the people, I see wheelchair people, I see joggers, I see skateboarders, I see walkers, all coming into town along there. And it would be really nice to see that they would have a safe way to go there. I have a picture of a lady in a wheelchair with somebody shoveling snow for her so that she can have her wheelchair go over the ice. I don't think that's acceptable.
Johanna, can you stick to the agenda item, please?
Well, the idea was to get to, we were talking about snow removal and safety and parking. And I think we could do that. And so on parking, one of my thoughts was over by the Caltrans right of way, over by Alma and MS Boulevard. I mentioned that a couple of years ago in something. And I also like Vicki's idea of a 2-story parking building in that same area. And I think, as a cyclist, I introduced the concept to Alta about the protected bike lanes that I saw up in Seattle. And I think that's something we can do and wrap that into the grants that you were talking about. But we can do that on Pine Street, we can do that on Mount Shasta Boulevard and Chestnut Street. And I think those are all things that can be done. And I think the walk, bike, ride study can be used for that. I think that's how, what you were talking about is getting grant funding. And I think that's a great way to do that. I think, I like the idea of a low-cost housing hospital. I thought that was really good that the one speaker brought up as well. So anyway, those are my thoughts, and thank you for your consideration.
Thank you, Johanna. All right, we will close public comment, bring it back to council for further discussion or motion.
No, just to the chair.
Yes.
Okay, this is just a question for Chief over there. Where Vicki Gold has suggested the parking structure, that's where we've got all the homeless living in their vehicles that technically we can't tow apparently because of the court case. Is that true?
Are you talking the parking?
Yeah, the ones behind what used to be Burger Express there?
No, there's 72-hour parking.
Okay.
There's 72-hour parking when it's not snow removal season. Right now it's snow removal season. That's a designated parking area. So basically, people can be back there with expired registration vehicles, anything, because it is where they put their cars because they can't park on the street. Once it goes back to basically, we typically look at it the same way you do studded tires. When the studded tires are on the car, it's a designated snow parking lot. When it's not, it's a 72-hour parking lot.
Oh, it is 72, okay.
So we have been actively enforcing the 72-hour parking when we can. We just, during the winter, we can't do it because we've designated that a safe parking space.
Okay.
And to the chair.
John, you spoke about unifying Castle Street and simpler ideas and things that were achievable, easier to execute, and solve, or begin to solve, the problem of trying to have a more unified downtown. And just, this may be stating the obvious, but we don't have streetlights like we do on Mount Shasta Boulevard over on Chestnut. We don't have the same low streetlights that kind of make it all look like it's a cohesive thing. And just as an idea, because we're going to...
You mean the streetlights?
Not the big overhead ones, the old-fashioned streetlights.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
We don't have those over on Chestnut, and
That's a simple thing.
That's a thing that I would be anyway. Just I'm not trying to make solutions here. Just
I agree.
Just something to...
A simpler solution that enhances the experience.
This wasn't on tonight's agenda for an action item, only for information. We've gotten the information from Pace. Our city manager indicated, I think, a desire to have Tom Hesseldenz here at the next meeting. I think we've got to start on the discussion of this, and we keep it going.
Okay. So through the chair? No, did you suggest setting up a committee, like an ad hoc committee? Okay, so I'm in favor of that to clarify, first and foremost, the goals that this idea is projecting. I can isolate on 3, possibly 4 goals. Beautification of Castle Street, more parking, better traffic flow, or in this case, it sounds like it's going to create worse traffic flow, better business conditions on Chestnut. Those are the potential goals, and been hinted at, more than hinted at. I think that committee needs to clarify that first, if we go that route, the committee route, ad hoc committee route, and then talk about achievability of those goals. But anyhow, that's my comment.
And Councilmember Stackcliffe, I like that idea also, but I was thinking in my own mind that perhaps we'd wait until after the next meeting, or perhaps sometime in the near future, rather than taking any action tonight, because again, it's not an action item tonight, if that works for others.
I like to get things done.
Yeah, I know you do.
Extra things done. I'm not. It's called toxic productivity. But I think if we can maybe collectively have Tom Hesseldenz weigh in on this ad hoc committee so we can congruently move forward, and maybe it's with this ad hoc committee, but also get the business feelers started and see how our businesses are feeling. If everyone's against it, then maybe we just stop or change our focus to a different aspect. So I would like to put the ad hoc committee on for, if we can't do that now, then for that next meeting.
I'd be supportive of that, and frankly, I think somebody from DIAC would be good to be on that committee, and I would certainly be very interested in being on the committee too.
Well, actually, I think somebody from the beautification committee should be on that, since we're talking about beautifying, and they've talked about beautifying Castle Street. It's been one of their goals, and then DIAC, I think a couple council members.
And maybe there should be a representative of one of the chamber.
Okay.
We can discuss it at the next meeting.
I was going to say ATC, but that
affects
committee
everyone.
doesn't exist, right?
Yeah.
Active Transportation? That committee is
I think that's gone now.
not around.
It is a committee of 5 members, and there was 1 member left, and we haven't done anything about that.
Okay.
To fill
Is
the
that
vacancies.
are you the one member?
No, I can't be on that. I was on that committee, yeah. So it'll be on the
Okay.
next agenda.
We have enough direction, I think. Thank you very much. And thank you for your presentation, Seth. That was very well done.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you, guys.
Have a good evening.
You too.
Okay, let's take a 10-minute recess. So we'll meet back at 7:15.
And it was unanimous approval for granting the Trail Association an easement on the landing for an area where the grades were such that it probably isn't going to be developed. And there was one council member that wanted this item brought back solely to take a look at the language, essentially. And so it's that opportunity to take a look at this. We went and looked at different ways, and some of the rabbit holes we went down got extra complicated, and the version that we have is more of a licensing agreement, and it gives us all the latitude in the world that if a developer comes in and purchases the property, that the Trail Association would agree to move their trails. So it's a pretty straightforward and elegant solution in comparison to some of the backbending and gyrations that we went through the first couple times through.
Thank you very much. Questions? No? Okay, we'll open it up to public comment.
Trails in nature start with animals and humans. Trails in nature out in the woods begin as trails made by animals, deer, bear. And then as civilization gets established a bit, the humans follow the animal trails. And when city becomes cities, they turn that into sidewalks. Now my neighbor, Mr. Stackcliffe, he has one of the most remarkable sidewalks on his corner that I'm sure he's well aware of, because it's literally a death trap. It's 5-6 inches of concrete, maybe 4 square feet, 6 square feet, right on the corner of Alder and Castle, and it basically is a free seesaw for any kids that want to do this, because it has a fulcrum and it goes like this. And it's been that way for all of my 30 years that I've been here. And if that is not an indication of what this city sets as a priority for pedestrians, I don't know what is. You literally take your life in your hands,
Can we
walking.
I'm sorry, can we stick to the agenda item, please?
The agenda item is you're going to spend some more money on the Roseburg property and develop trails. Is that my understanding of the agenda item, Madam Mayor? Is that correct? Because every time you interrupt me, I'm going to stop and listen to you.
So we don't need to do a power play.
Power play. Power, okay.
Madam Mayor, through the chair, may I clarify? David, the Mount Shasta Trail Association has requested to be able to put a gateway trail extension on part of the landing, on the east side of the landing that would not otherwise be used for development. The city and the Trail Association have come to an agreement to give the Trail Association a license, and the matter is before the council tonight to act on that proposed license, that proposed agreement. So that's the agenda item that you would be speaking to if you want to speak to.
And the trail is built at their expense.
Right.
So that would be
it's not a cost.
I don't want
of
to
the
interrupt.
city. Yeah, not a cost of the city.
No cost to the city. Okay. I just hope Mr. Stackcliffe doesn't break his leg someday on his corner.
Okay. We will close public comment and bring it back to council discussion or motion.
I would move that we approve the proposed license agreement for the Pioneer Trailhead and Bear Spring Trail on the Roseburg property or the Landing property as set forth. I would ask that in doing so that the paragraph numbers be corrected. We go from paragraph 7 to paragraph 10. At least on my version on page 72.
Is there a second?
Second, sir.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay, moving on to number 12, code enforcement of properties deemed a nuisance, neglected, and/or volatile state, and local building codes. Todd?
Yes. So at our goal-setting workshop and during other discussions, it was brought up as a major priority for us to abate nuisance properties, whether because of neglect, because of building code violations, violations of municipal code, to take an approach where code enforcement and the police department, by sector starts, citing for some of these deficiencies, in a way that isn't going to overwhelm city staff. And we're looking not to be looking for ticky-tacky fouls, but stuff that's pretty obviously a problem. So it's just looking for approval to start that.
Yeah, I'm excited about this one. Council questions?
Yeah, so you're looking for approval or direction to develop a program.
Yeah, just that.
You haven't quite developed it yet, so you're looking for us to approve
just
the development of that program. Then you come back with what you're going to do? Is that
well, no, it's more like, we've talked about this before. We have the bandwidth, within reason. We'd have to do it kind of piece by piece, but it's enforcing the rules that we have on the books, and we will also be enforcing state building codes on properties that are clearly in distress.
So you want our blessing or approval to continue? Okay.
Exactly.
All right.
To the chair? City manager, is the nuisance ordinance involved in this? I mean, refresh my memory. Is this one of the driving documents that kind of guides?
It is. That's very specific about one type of issue, and it's really looking to it. That's the vacant and distressed property is leaning more towards commercial structures. This is also bringing in residences that, like we've abated a property, the family. Believe it or not, their last name is Piggy. That was just a mess, and we needed to abate it. So it's just making sure that I have council's backing when our police department goes after some of these properties that have been known and neglected.
Thank you.
I'm going to save it for comment.
Okay, open it up for public comment.
I'm Jen Rogar again. And this is perfect. I didn't know that was happening tonight, but this is why I'm here. But I'd like to see not having a building condemned and then sit there, turn it over for the neighborhood and put it to good use, low-income housing, a hostel, a shelter for people, a domestic violence safe haven. There's a lot of, affordable housing, which California desperately needs anyway. So, but also, maybe the building could be also not condemned necessarily. Like maybe the nest didn't have to be condemned. I don't want to get off track. Maybe it could have been policed. No offense, but I don't know. I don't know the details. There's a lot, but if you need help, we're here. There's a coalition. We'll build a coalition here in Mount Shasta, of residents that'll help you out on this issue. So, thanks.
Thank you.
Unfortunate for this city, I've lived here for 30 years, and I've poked my nose in city council for 30 years. I'm a 3-time loser running for city council. But of all the agendas I've read in those 30 years, none has been more scary than this one. To think that a staff member is going to deem a building a nuisance and that they're not following state building codes, that they're unsightly. I mean, I'm very proud of our new city manager because he just got a raise of, if I understood right, $150,000 a year. The last time I heard what the average income for the citizens of this town was $24,000.
Please stay to the agenda item.
The idea that the police and the city manager are going to be inspecting houses to see if they're following business codes, state codes, local ordinances, and then what? They vote on, well, that needs to be fixed. We deem this a nuisance. And if they don't fix it, what? You acquire the property, you demand that they fix their plumbing, or they change the color of the house, or God knows what they come up with. It is such a subjective thing. And maybe after a few years that you're deeming buildings a nuisance, maybe you'll move on to people. Maybe one person says, this guy's a nuisance. Let's tell everyone in town that I hate them, and I hate my 78-year-old partner, and they're nuisances. So yes, yell and scream at them for 8 years, and maybe they'll just move out because they're really bugging me.
Okay, public comment is closed. Back to council discussion.
We have been working, coming to this point for a number of years, actually. We were not able to take action that we thought was needed in the past because we didn't have a code enforcement officer, or because we didn't have a nuisance ordinance or certain other things. We didn't have the bandwidth. We now have the tools in place and the staff bandwidth to move forward as we've wanted to do for some years. So I for one, would certainly support the staff in taking needed action. Not arbitrary or capricious action, but reasonable and necessary action. If there's further discussion, great. Otherwise, I just would like to make a motion that we authorize and direct staff to move forward.
Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
All right. 13, solid waste franchise agreement. Muriel?
Yes, Madam Mayor. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Better get a little closer, right? This is coming before you for basically a ministerial type amendment to the solid waste franchise agreement, changing the agreement to actually correspond to our fiscal year dates rather than an arbitrary date outside of our fiscal year, and to also put into the agreement something that USA Waste as well as Summit Disposal used to do. They pick up all of our garbage cans in the downtown area that had never been actually formally put into an agreement, and we wanted to formally recognize that with the locations of the cans and recognize that they are doing that service to us for basically nothing. And that's it. Just to amend the franchise agreement to recognize, again, our fiscal year date, as well as recognizing that USA Waste is picking up our downtown garbage containers.
Sounds pretty cut and dry. Questions from council?
Muriel, I'm certainly supportive of this. I do have what may be a tangential question. When we switched from Smith, it was my understanding that we were going to switch from the blue bags to separate containers. And I think we've passed that time frame, so...
Well, we have passed that time frame, and that there's several reasons for that. Recycling in the state of California, at least for us, has been difficult to get to the point where we're able to take care of all of our recycling. In fact, Waste Management is handling the blue bags and actually taking them to another location. I don't know if it's in Anderson or in Redding, somewhere down there, rather than having the Opportunity Center sort the recycling, because it became a huge issue for the Opportunity Center to actually handle and sort all of the recycling in a manner that was, well, safe, and to be able to get it to other places. And there's basically now no market for recycling material, mainly because there were some changes in, I believe it's China, and acceptance of recycling material into their country. That hasn't happened. That's changed the United States in their handling of recycling. So it's a much larger issue than just Little Mount Shasta and getting containers versus blue bags, which is the plan. It's still the plan. It's just going to take more time for us to determine how we're going to be able to handle that recycling. One of the things I can say is that in the what's it called? The dump, the old dump here,
The
transfer station. Thank you. It wasn't coming to my tongue. Anyway, that transfer station, to develop into a place where recycling is handled, green waste is handled, and all of the other things that are coming down the pike for through the state of California, these mandates that are coming eventually. Even though we're in a rural area and our timeline has been pushed out as to when we have to meet those particular requirements, there's still going to be requirements. And hopefully we're going to be able to partner with whomever gets the transfer station contract, that we can develop that area into handling also our recycling
as well as a lot of solid waste, green waste, you name it. And that, so our citizens will be able to then have those things picked up and taken to a centralized location and handled.
Not to prolong discussion, but looking in your crystal ball, what sort of time frame are we looking at?
It's pretty cloudy. That crystal, that crystal ball is pretty cloudy, so I mean, if I would be guessing at best, so.
Maybe. Ask again later. Any other questions? Okay, we'll open for public comment.
If I understand this agenda correctly, we're referring to the garbage collection, which would include the very attractive, I call them the Pebble new containers. Is that the correct agenda item we're speaking about? Okay. And I think they're quite attractive. I love them. They make the old ones even look uglier in comparison, and I would love to see those thrown in the transfer. Yes, Muriel?
We're in the process of ordering another batch of those containers that will be replacing those really ugly ones, just to let you know.
That's very nice to hear. I'll give you all the time to speak anytime you like. No, really. I love you, Muriel. I love Kathy, too. This city would, without these two women, but back to the topic at hand, there was a problem with the one in front of the Fifth Season, and I'm pretty sure both of you ladies know of that. The way I took it, somehow that got not in the contract and it wasn't collected and it just overflowed with garbage, and probably someone in the Fifth Season just wrapped it up with saran wrap, and then eventually it took months for it to finally get cleaned out and then properly taken care of, which was good to see. There's one on Alma and the Boulevard. There's two there, the pebble ones, the attractive ones. And when Howard Gubetta, he's the first guy. He gets up before 2. He starts doing the plowing at 2 a.m. And I have an old man schedule, so I'm often up at that time. And there's that one on the west south corner there at that intersection. It's been moved like right on the curb so he can get his machine in there to clear the sidewalks. Thank you very much for your time.
Our first speaker will be Diana.
Okay, Diana, begin when ready, please.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Wonderful, thank you. Honorable Mayor, City Council, my name is Diana. I'm your representative from WM. And like Muriel had stated very, very well, thank you, Muriel. The amendment that is before you is simply a correction of dates. That has to do with some of the deadlines that we have to submit documents to the city. We just wanted to be in alignment with the fiscal year rather than the calendar year and make those corrections. In addition, we wanted to add in the fact that we were and that's been added into the agreement as well. If you have any other questions for me while I'm here regarding any other services?
Does council have any questions for Diana? No? No, I think we're okay, Diana. Thank you.
Great. Thank you so much.
Okay, our next speaker will be Johanna.
Okay, Johanna, be good when ready.
Hi there. Hi there. I just had one question. I inquired about the blue cans like Tim was asking about last year because I was a little confused about the timing of that as well. And then what I realized was that we have these plastic bags and those get thrown out every single time you recycle, which sort of, in my mind, defeats the recycling aspect of all of this. And I was wondering if when they pick up those blue bags, perhaps they could leave those blue bags tucked into the back of the lid of the garbage can so that the people who put them out can get their own bags back again so there's no contamination or anything. But it seems to me that might be a better idea to actually recycle rather than causing more waste. Anyway, that was my only thought on that topic. Thank you.
Thank you, Johanna.
There are no other hands raised.
Okay, back to council.
To the chair, are there, with these cans that are downtown on Chestnut Street and Main Street, are homeowners and business owners allowed to take their garbage and use those containers? Just curious, because I've had people complain to me that business owners and homeowners on Chestnut Street are using the public cans for their own garbage that way. I'm just wondering if that's legal.
I don't know about the legality of them putting garbage into a public. Most of the businesses downtown have their own trash cans, and it is illegal to dump into the business's trash cans because they're paying for that. So if you had somebody illegally dumping into your business, as far as the public trash cans, I'd have to look into that about a business.
Okay. I just have had citizens complaining to me about that, saying it's illegal, but I was just curious if that's actually true.
I'm not aware, so I can look into it.
Okay.
Yeah.
So I'll move to approve Resolution CCR-23-07, resolution of the City Council of the City of Mount Shasta adopting an amendment to the solid waste franchise agreement.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All right, number 14, TRC contract amendment. Mr. Uhas?
Okay, back in November, was in front of this body looking for additional funds for TRC contract for our contract planner. And, initially, the information that I pulled up internally showed that we'd had $200,000 spent, an erroneous number. Muriel and I looked back at the original contract. The original contract was signed in 2018 for $5,000 for some initiative that was happening at that time. That was expended quickly. There was a request for additional funds to complete that initiative for an additional $20,000. And so in 2018, there's $25,000 expended. And we came back in November where we sought an additional $50,000 for TRC's work. And, we've reached a point where we got a number of bills in. The invoicing was very strange. It seems like there was some double billing. And the fact that we were receiving our bills, months after the work was done was problematic. So we've had numerous discussions with TRC. They need to start billing us immediately when the tasks are done, which they've agreed to do. And so, one of the things we did find was that there was a past due amount of $35,000 that was about 4 months old. So that was a real problematic, and that led to, our pushing back forcefully that we need to see those bills paid or in front of us so we can pay them on time. So what we're seeking is the approval to pay the overage of $35,000, and based on the current burn rate for our contract planner to carry us through to the end of June, we need an additional $80,000. So we're looking at an amendment 3 to cover the overage and the work to be done through the end of the fiscal year of a total of $115,000.
Thank you. Questions?
To the chair. Muriel, we went through the mid-year budget review and had a deficit of $380 or so thousand. And can you tell me roughly how much, if any, of this 115 was included in that deficit?
About 50,000.
So this would bump up the deficit by another 50 or by another?
Well, there's another way to look at it. There are a couple of ways to look at it. One, we still have a budget amount for personnel, and
Right.
we don't have anybody. So that's a plus.
Right.
And then on the other side, we're paying for a contract person, which is now
Right.
that much more. So it's probably a $20,000 to $25,000 loss, additional loss, but it does net with, like I said, with the budgeting amount for salaries, because we still don't have somebody.
Right. Well,
Right.
First of all, thank you. That's
If that makes sense.
So it nets out between the positive of not paying a permanent and getting a temporary, nets out about an additional 25 or so.
Correct.
That range. Okay, thank you.
Correct, and I would also say that compared to prior year contract type things that this same individual is doing, Kyle, he's doing way more project work than we've ever had before when we were using a contract person. Yeah, there's just numerous questions and numerous things that he's been doing above and beyond what we originally anticipated that contract person to have to do.
Thank you.
How's the rapport with Kyle? I hear it's getting better. What would you think?
Well, so yes, he's gotten significantly better, and yes, I mean that's the bottom line. He's gotten a lot better, and he continues to get better. He cares about the job, and he's working at it. Part of it is he's young and he's green, and he's got quick answers, which he didn't have before when somebody asks him things. But the one knock is he is young and he doesn't necessarily have the gravitas to carry some of the things that he says through, and that's something that I'm working with him on. But yeah, overall he's doing great.
Any other questions? Okay, we'll open up for public comment.
So if I understand the topic here correctly, it's a budget consideration. Is that right, Muriel? Yeah, because I remember a couple meetings ago, you're running a $500,000 budget deficit, close to that? No? Is that wrong? Muriel, I'll yield all the time.
Keep in mind, this is just public comment, so we don't do a back and forth discussion generally.
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am. So if it's a budget consideration, because now you have to give this planning director $110,000 that you hadn't planned on, that's my understanding. I hope I'm right. You could just nod maybe if I'm right. I would think Muriel, and tell me if I'm wrong, Muriel, but you were not very comfortable with the financial state of affairs. And I'm sorry to keep you up late, but You know, people are yawning while I'm talking. It's odd that, you know, I have to always look for the proper words at all time, or then my free speech is stopped. Whereas two council members can say this one sentence: I hate them, the whole town knows it, the Dream Inn. Remarkable.
Okay. Public comment is closed.
We do have some speakers on Zoom.
Oh, yes, thank
Go ahead
you.
and take Zoom public comment now. Our first speaker will be Peggy Risch.
Hello, Peggy.
You know, we haven't had a planner for a while, and so I understand that a contract planner costs more. But my understanding is that when we did have a city salary, which is available online, all government employees, was around $79,000. So you're being asked to basically have an additional $80,000 for someone's contract work till June. And if you count March, April, May, June, so you're going to pay a contract planner $20,000 a month. I want that job. Really. And then in addition, they submitted their bills late, and there's another $35,000. So that means this contract planner is getting paid like almost twice as much as an employee would be. And honestly, you know, I don't know Kyle personally, so I don't want to make anything personal comments, but it is upsetting to me as a resident that we don't still have a city planner, and that then we have this excessive amount of expenditure for consultants. So, you know, I don't know what to say. I think that you probably have to approve it, but I think that there could use some money to look for other means to get a city planner in and put that as a priority, an employee. And that's it.
Thank you, Peggy.
Our next speaker will be Betty Krieger.
Okay, Betty, begin when ready.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Great, because I'm having my headset on instead of my computer. It's something weird going on with the sound. I agree wholeheartedly with Peggy, what she just said. I'm very concerned that it has been nearly a year and we haven't made any progress on finding a city planner. Todd says that Kyle has really come up a lot. Well, he said that 6 months ago. And as I mentioned 6 months or so ago, I don't think that it should be our job to train a contract planner to be able to look at what we need. My observation in attending planning commission meetings is that Todd has that deer in the headlights look about half the time, and he doesn't he often seems to not have an answer, or I will go look for it. I think we really need to make some progress on finding a city planner, because as Peggy said, to pay somebody doing basically what I consider a halfway job to do the job of a city planner is just not meeting the criteria that we should be meeting. Thank you.
Thank you, Betty. All right, we will close public comment and back for council discussion or motion.
I'd like to ask the city manager to address the efforts being made to find a city planner.
Address what's been done up to date.
Yes, what efforts is staff making so
Yeah.
far to find a city planner?
So there are numerous publications that employers of planners post their their job postings on. They've all gone to those. I've written directly to the department heads of any accredited planning program on the West Coast, and have made calls to every planner that I know in the state looking for somebody to pull on. We're offering enough that we should be able to get somebody solid in. I think, the next step for me is actually putting out the original planner posting and saying in that posting that new grads are welcome to apply at the same time that we're having the planning manager posting out there to see, who we can get to fill this job more quickly. But, we've been posting in all the right publications, we've been making the calls, we've been writing the right folks, and there isn't a day that goes by that some effort isn't being made to find somebody. But I'm dealing with a lot of planning firms right now that are working on various projects for the city, and they can't take on new work because they can't find planners to pull on. Doesn't matter how much they're paying, they cannot find planners, and that seems to be across the board.
If there's no further discussion, I would move to approve. Or perhaps I'll let Councilmember Stackfluff do that.
All right. So I'll move to approve an amendment to the TRC Solutions contract with the city to allow for additional funds to complete consultant planning work as needed in the amount of $115,000 to the end of this fiscal year.
Is it additional 115 or additional 80?
It's 80,000 for additional work through the end of the fiscal year. The rest is for overages that we were.
So the total amount is 115, right?
Yes.
Yep.
Okay. Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All right, we made it to future agenda items. Since there are no outside reports or meetings, future agenda items appearing on the agenda within 60 to 90 days. A, extending the moratorium on bed and breakfast licenses, 32723. B, audit review, 32723. Amendment to ordinance 18.91, cannabis industry land use to be determined. Ordinance regulating outdoor dining to be determined. Discussion and possible action, McLeod Avenue parking prohibition to be determined. Feasibility and cost study, one-way couplet to be determined. And we've added the ad hoc committee to our next agenda item. Are there any others?
Well, I think we also heard that that Tom Heselnetz is to come before us at the next meeting.
The chair?
Yes.
City manager, the outdoor dining ordinance, do you have any idea where that is in the priorities, in your priorities?
Yes, it's. I've got a really solid draft written that was circulated in-house, and I've got some comments. I've just been with the grants and everything else been going on. Haven't been able to incorporate them, but I'm going to see what I can do about getting that on the next city council agenda.
Excellent.
Great, thank you.
Johns, anything? All right. We're adjourned.